In the quiet suburbs of Connecticut, 2015, Charles Miller was the epitome of success, a 70-year-old real estate mogul worth millions, living in his mansion with everything money could buy. But his deepest secret wasn't his wealth. It was what flowed in his veins. When 19-year-old Jennifer Brown answered his ad for a live-in babysitter, neither knew their affair would end in blood. A story of desire, betrayal, and revenge, where the deadliest weapon wasn't the knife that took his life, but the truth he never told. In the affluent neighborhood of Greenwich, Connecticut, where old money whispered through manicured hedges and wrought iron gates, Charles Miller's mansion stood as a testament to his success. The year was 2015, and at 70 years old, Charles had everything money could buy, except companionship. His 15,000-square-foot estate, with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers, echoed with an emptiness that even his vast wealth couldn't fill. Charles stood at his office window, gazing out at the perfectly maintained gardens below. His reflection in the glass showed a distinguished man, silver hair perfectly coiffed, his custom-made Tom Ford suit hiding the slight stoop of age. His face, though lined with years, still retained the handsome features that had served him well in both business and pleasure. But today, those features were drawn with concern as he reviewed the latest stack of applications from the babysitting agency. His granddaughters, Sophie and Isabel, aged 6 and 4, were due to stay with him for the summer while his son and daughter-in-law worked overseas. The thought brought both joy and anxiety. He needed help, someone capable and trustworthy. The last 3 candidates had been disappointingly unsuitable, either lacking the sophistication he demanded or showing too much interest in his wealth rather than the children. The intercom buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. "Mr. Miller, Jennifer Brown is here for her interview," his housemaid announced. "Send her in, Margaret," he replied, straightening his tie and turning to face the door. The moment Jennifer Brown stepped into his office, Charles felt something shift in the air. She was youth personified, 19 years old, with honey-blonde hair falling in soft waves past her shoulders and eyes the color of summer storms. She wore a simple but elegant navy blue dress that spoke of careful preparation for this interview, though her nervous fidgeting with the strap of her leather bag betrayed her age. "Mr. Miller," she said, extending her hand with a confidence that impressed him. "Thank you for considering my application." Her grip was firm, her smile genuine. Charles gestured to the leather chair across from his desk, studying her as she sat down. There was something refreshingly authentic about her presence that stood out from the parade of polished but artificial candidates he'd seen. "Tell me about yourself, Ms. Brown," he said, his voice carrying the warmth that had closed countless business deals. Jennifer's story unfolded with captivating simplicity. A sophomore at Connecticut State, studying early childhood education. Working her way through college, determined to graduate debt-free. Her previous experience as a camp counselor and part-time nanny spoke to her capabilities, but it was the way her eyes lit up when speaking about children that caught Charles's attention. "My parents couldn't afford to send me to college," she explained, a slight flush coloring her cheeks. "But I refused to let that stop me. I've always believed that with hard work and determination, anything is possible." Charles found himself leaning forward, drawn in by her earnestness. "That's an admirable attitude, Ms. Brown. But taking care of 2 young children while maintaining your studies, that's quite an undertaking." She met his gaze steadily. "I'm used to balancing responsibilities, Mr. Miller. And honestly, I love working with children. It never feels like a burden." As the interview progressed, Charles became increasingly aware of subtle details. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when thinking, her quiet laugh at his attempt at humor, the intelligence behind her responses. She was beautiful, yes, but it was her combination of innocence and determination that intrigued him. "The position would require you to live here," he explained, watching her reaction carefully. "The East Wing guest suite would be yours. Complete privacy, of course, but available when needed." Jennifer's eyes widened slightly as she glanced around the opulent office. "That's very generous, Mr. Miller. Would I still be able to attend my classes?" "Absolutely. Your education is important. We can work around your schedule." He paused, then added with a slight smile, "And please, call me Charles." The way she said his name, "Thank you, Charles," sent an unexpected thrill through him. It had been years since he'd felt this sort of immediate connection with someone. He stood, gesturing toward the door. "Would you like a tour of the house? You should see where you'll be staying if you accept the position." As they walked through the mansion's elegant corridors, Charles found himself watching Jennifer's reactions. Her genuine awe at the library with its 2-story walls of books, her delight at the children's playroom he'd had specially designed, the way she trailed her fingers along the balustrade of the grand staircase, each response made him more certain of his choice. The East Wing guest suite exceeded even Jennifer's evident expectations. A spacious sitting room opened onto a private balcony overlooking the rose garden. The bedroom, with its king-sized bed and ensuite bathroom, rivaled any luxury hotel. "This is incredible," she breathed, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. Charles stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, enjoying her wonder. "The children's rooms are just down the hall. Close enough if they need you, but allowing you your privacy." Their eyes met, and for a moment, something electric passed between them. Jennifer looked away first, a blush creeping up her neck. "When would you need me to start?" she asked, her voice slightly breathless. "The children arrive next week. You could move in this weekend. Get settled before they come." Charles moved closer, ostensibly to show her the view from the balcony. The subtle scent of her perfume, something young and floral, made him acutely aware of their proximity. "I should warn you," he said softly, "this job can be demanding. The hours are long, the responsibilities significant. But," he turned to face her, "the rewards can be substantial." Jennifer met his gaze, and in that moment, both recognized the undertone of his words. She should have been intimidated, this powerful man in his magnificent house, offering her a position that seemed too good to be true. Instead, she felt a flutter of excitement, of possibility. "I'm not afraid of hard work, Charles," she replied, her voice steady despite the color in her cheeks. "And I'm very good at what I do." As Charles walked her to the front door, their business discussion concluded with details of salary and start dates. He felt a long-dormant part of himself awakening. Jennifer's youth and beauty were obvious attractions, but it was more than that. She represented everything he missed: vitality, innocence, the promise of something new. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known as he watched her walk to her modest car, was that this moment marked the beginning of a path that would lead to destruction. His wealth and power, her youth and ambition, would combine into a volatile mixture that would eventually explode with devastating consequences. Standing at his office window later that evening, watching the sun set over his manicured grounds, Charles allowed himself to imagine the possibilities the summer might bring. He had no way of knowing that in less than a year, one of them would be dead, and the other's life would be destroyed forever. The perfect setup was complete. The players were in position, and the tragedy was ready to unfold. The summer heat had settled over Greenwich like a silk shawl, turning the manicured gardens of the Miller estate into a lush paradise. Jennifer Brown had been working as the live-in babysitter for 2 weeks now, and already the mansion's grandeur had become less intimidating. The marble floors no longer echoed quite so loudly under her feet, and the crystal chandeliers had become familiar companions in her daily routine. Sophie and Isabel, Charles' granddaughters, had taken to Jennifer immediately. Their innocent laughter filled the once quiet halls as she chased them through the house, their games of hide-and-seek bringing life to rooms that had stood silent for too long. Charles often found himself pausing in his home office, listening to the sounds of happiness drifting through the air-conditioning vents. But it wasn't just the children's joy that caught his attention. It was the way Jennifer moved through his house, her youth and vitality seeming to brighten every room she entered. He noticed how her sundresses clung to her figure as she bent to tie Sophie's shoes, the way her hair caught the sunlight as she read stories on the garden terrace. The first gift came after Jennifer had successfully handled a particularly difficult tantrum from Isabel. Charles had watched from his study as she'd managed the situation with patience and grace, never losing her composure. "You're exceptionally good with them," he said that evening, after the girls were asleep. Jennifer had been curled up in the library, studying for her summer classes. She looked up, startled by his presence. "They're wonderful children," she smiled, closing her textbook. Charles moved closer, producing a small blue box from behind his back. "This is just a token of my appreciation." Inside was a delicate silver bracelet from Tiffany's, simple enough to be appropriate, expensive enough to make her gasp. "Mr. Miller, Charles, I couldn't possibly." "Please," he insisted, taking her wrist gently. His fingers brushed against her pulse point as he fastened the clasp. "You deserve it." That touch, brief as it was, sent electricity through both of them. Jennifer looked up at him, her gray eyes wide, and Charles felt his breath catch. For a moment, they stayed frozen in that tableau of unspoken possibility. The gifts continued, a Hermes scarf left casually on her bed, a pair of Christian Louboutin heels that matched her favorite dress, a vintage first edition of her beloved Jane Austen. Each present came with a note in Charles' elegant handwriting, each one more personal than the last. Jennifer found herself watching him too, the way his tailored suits emphasized his still athletic frame, how distinguished the silver in his hair looked in the evening light. She noticed when he loosened his tie after a long day, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled at his granddaughters. The tension built in small moments, their fingers brushing as they both reached for the coffee pot in the morning, lingering glances across the dinner table, conversations that stretched late into the night after the children were asleep. Charles would pour them both glasses of expensive wine, and Jennifer would feel herself getting drunk on more than just the alcohol. One particularly warm evening, Charles found Jennifer in the pool house, gathering toys the girls had left scattered. She was wearing a modest one-piece swimsuit, having just finished swimming with the children. Water droplets traced paths down her neck, disappearing beneath the fabric. "The girls are already asleep," she said, straightening up. "They wore themselves out in the pool." Charles moved closer, picking up a floating toy. "You're amazing with them. They adore you." "I adore them too." Jennifer tucked a wet strand of hair behind her ear. "This job, it's more than I ever expected. Is that a good thing?" Charles asked, his voice low. He was close enough now that she could smell his cologne. "Yes," she whispered, hardly daring to breathe. The first kiss was gentle, almost hesitant. Charles cupped her face in his hands as if she were made of porcelain, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. Jennifer leaned into him, her hands resting on his chest, feeling his heartbeat through his expensive shirt. What followed was a blur of sensation. The softness of the pool house couch beneath her back, the weight of Charles above her, the taste of wine on his lips. His hands, experienced and confident, drew sighs from her that echoed in the humid air. "Are you sure?" he asked, pulling back to look at her face. "We can stop." Jennifer answered by pulling him back down to her, her youth and desire overwhelming any hesitation. She was naive about many things, but in that moment, she felt powerful and wanted. Later, as they lay tangled in each other's arms, Charles traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "You're extraordinary," he murmured, pressing kisses to her temple. Jennifer felt like she was floating, wrapped in a bubble of luxury and desire. She didn't notice the shadow that crossed Charles' face when she nestled closer, didn't see the flicker of guilt in his eyes as he held her. The pattern was established. Stolen moments in the pool house, long nights in his bedroom when the children were away, passionate encounters in his office. Charles showered her with more gifts, designer clothes, expensive jewelry, promises of trips to Paris and Rome. Jennifer fell hard and fast, as only a 19-year-old can. She didn't question why a man of Charles' status and wealth would be interested in someone so young. She didn't wonder about his past relationships, didn't ask about the medicine cabinet in his bathroom that was always locked. The summer stretched on in a haze of luxury and passion. Jennifer moved through her days in a dream state, caring for the children, attending her classes, and falling deeper into her affair with Charles. She felt like a character in a romance novel, the young woman swept off her feet by a wealthy, sophisticated man. But there were signs, had she been experienced enough to read them. The way Charles sometimes went quiet after their lovemaking, lost in thoughts he wouldn't share. The occasional phone calls he took in private, speaking in hushed tones. The photographs he kept locked away in his study drawer. One evening, as they lay in his bed, Jennifer traced the lines of his face with her fingers. "Tell me about your past," she whispered. "I want to know everything about you." Charles caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "The past doesn't matter," he said. "Only this, only us." She accepted his deflection, too in love to press further. She didn't know that secrets, like poison, have a way of seeping out eventually. She couldn't have known that every kiss, every touch, every moment of passion was bringing her closer to a truth that would destroy them both. In the golden bubble of that summer, Jennifer Brown thought she was living a fairy tale. She had no way of knowing she was actually living in a horror story, one where the monster wore custom suits and delivered death with every kiss. The tragedy was already in motion, ticking away like a time bomb beneath the surface of their passion. And when it finally exploded, it would leave nothing but ashes in its wake. As autumn painted Greenwich trees in shades of gold and crimson, the affair between Charles Miller and Jennifer Brown had evolved beyond mere physical attraction. Their secret rendezvous had become more frequent, more intense, driven by a desperate need that neither fully understood. The mansion's vast rooms became their playground, each corner holding memories of passionate encounters. Jennifer's initial fascination with Charles had deepened into something more profound. She found herself studying his face in quiet moments, the way worry lines appeared between his brows when he checked his phone, how his hands sometimes trembled slightly before he took his morning pills. She'd begun leaving little notes in his briefcase, bringing him coffee just the way he liked it, learning the rhythms of his moods. But there were shadows in their paradise, moments when reality tried to pierce their bubble of passion. The first crack appeared during a dinner party Charles hosted for his business associates. Jennifer, playing her role as the children's caretaker, watched from the periphery as Charles charmed his guests. A woman in her 50s, elegant in a black cocktail dress, caught her attention. Charles always did have a type, the woman remarked quietly, appearing beside Jennifer at the buffet table. Young, beautiful, eager to please. Jennifer's hand froze over the canapés. "I'm sorry." "Oh, darling." The woman's smile was sharp as a blade. "You're not the first. There was Hannah before you, and Michelle before her. All young, all gorgeous." She paused, swirling her wine. "All gone now." Before Jennifer could respond, Charles materialized beside them, his hand possessively finding the small of her back. "Margaret," his voice carried a warning. "I see you're making friends with my staff." Margaret's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. "Just sharing old memories, Charles. You remember Hannah, don't you?" The tension in Charles' jaw was visible as he steered Jennifer away. Later that night, when she asked about Hannah and Michelle, he dismissed her questions with passionate kisses that left her breathless and forgetful. But seeds of curiosity had been planted. Jennifer began noticing things she'd overlooked before. The locked drawer in his study that he never opened in her presence. The way he sometimes woke in the night, drenched in sweat, muttering names she didn't know. The medicine cabinet in his bathroom, always secured, filled with bottles she couldn't identify. One afternoon, while Charles was at a business meeting, Jennifer was putting away laundry in his closet when she found a showbox filled with photographs. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were pictures of women, all young, all beautiful, all sharing the same adoring look she recognized from her own reflection. At the bottom of the box was a newspaper clipping from 3 years ago. Local woman dies of AIDS-related complications. The photo showed a younger, smiling Hannah Matthews, identified as a former employee of Miller Enterprises. Jennifer's heart pounded as she read further, noting the woman's age, just 24. Charles found her there, sitting on the closet floor surrounded by the evidence of his past. "You shouldn't be going through my things," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Who were they?" Jennifer's voice shook. "Hannah, Michelle. What happened to them?" Charles sank down beside her, suddenly looking every one of his 70 years. "The past is complicated, Jennifer. There are things you don't understand. Then help me understand," she pleaded, reaching for his hand. "I love you, Charles. Nothing you tell me will change that." The words hung between them, her first declaration of love met with his heavy silence. Finally, he spoke. "Love is dangerous, Jennifer. It makes us blind to things we should see clearly." But he didn't push her away when she kissed him, didn't stop her when she began unbuttoning his shirt. Their lovemaking that evening had a desperate edge to it, as if Charles was trying to erase her questions with his touch. Later, Jennifer lay awake, watching Charles sleep. The moonlight streaming through the windows silvered his hair, softened the lines of his face. She traced the scars on his chest, old surgical marks he'd never explained, and felt a deep ache of love and worry. The next morning, she found a small velvet box on her pillow containing a pair of diamond earrings worth more than her entire college tuition. The note read simply, "For my angel. Let's not dwell on ghosts." But the ghosts were already there, whispering their warnings. Jennifer began noticing Charles' frequent doctor appointments, the way he sometimes winced in pain when he thought no one was watching. She started researching his symptoms online, late at night when the house was quiet. Charles, meanwhile, was fighting his own battles. Each time he looked at Jennifer, radiant with youth and love, guilt clawed at his chest. He knew he should end it, knew the danger he was putting her in. But like an addict, he couldn't give her up. Her presence had become his oxygen, her love the only thing making him feel alive. The children noticed changes too. "Why does Grandpa look sad when he watches you?" Sophie asked Jennifer one day while they were painting. Jennifer's hand stilled on the paper. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Sometimes when you're playing with us, he stands in the doorway and looks at you like he's going to cry," the little girl explained, focused on her artwork. That evening, Jennifer found Charles in his study, staring at a medical report. She caught a glimpse of bold letters, CD4 count and viral load, before he quickly folded the paper away. "Is there something you need to tell me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Charles stood, crossing to the window. "There are many things I should tell you," he said finally. "But I'm a selfish man, Jennifer. I've always taken what I wanted. Consequences be damned." She moved behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist, pressing her cheek to his back. "Whatever it is, we can face it together." He turned in her embrace, cupping her face in his hands. "My sweet, naive girl," he murmured, kissing her deeply. "Some secrets are better left buried. But secrets, like bodies, have a way of rising to the surface." As autumn deepened into winter, the truth was already preparing to explode, ready to shatter their world of crystal chandeliers and stolen kisses. Neither of them could have predicted how their story would end, in a tangle of love, betrayal, and revenge that would leave one of them dead and the other forever changed. The tragedy was no longer just approaching. It was already there, living in their blood, in their kisses, in every touch they shared. And when the truth finally emerged, it would prove more devastating than either of them could have imagined. The first signs appeared in early December. Jennifer dismissed the persistent fatigue as end-of-semester stress, blamed the night sweats on the mansion's overactive heating system. But when the lymph nodes in her neck swelled painfully, making it difficult to turn her head, she couldn't ignore the symptoms any longer. "It's probably just mono," the campus clinic doctor said, drawing blood for tests. "Common among college students. We'll run a complete panel just to be sure." Jennifer sat in the sterile exam room, her fingers absently tracing the expensive bracelet Charles had given her just last week. She'd been feeling increasingly unwell, her body betraying her in ways she couldn't understand. The fever that came and went, the unexplained bruises on her legs, the persistent cough that kept her awake at night. The call came 3 days later. The doctor's voice was carefully neutral. "Ms. Brown, we need you to come in. Today, if possible. There are some results we need to discuss in person." She drove to the clinic in Charles' latest gift, a brand new BMW he'd insisted she needed for safety in the winter weather. The irony of his concern would soon become brutally clear. The doctor's words fell like bombs in the quiet office. HIV positive, early stage, immediate treatment necessary. Jennifer heard them as if from underwater, her mind refusing to process their meaning. She was 19. She'd only ever been with Charles. Charles. The realization hit her with physical force, doubling her over in the chair. The locked medicine cabinet. The mysterious doctor appointments. The dead lovers in those photographs. "We need to contact your recent sexual partners," the doctor was saying. "It's important to trace the transmission." "I know who gave it to me," Jennifer interrupted, her voice hollow. I know exactly who did this. That night, after putting the children to bed, Jennifer waited in Charles' study. Her laptop was open to a folder she'd created over the past few weeks, filled with her research into his past. She'd initially dismissed the coincidences, but now every piece fell into horrible place. Hannah Matthews, dead at 24. Michelle Rodriguez, dead at 22. Both former employees of Charles Miller. Both dying young, their obituaries dancing delicately around the cause of death. Both linked to Charles through photographs, through whispered rumors, through the same deadly virus now coursing through Jennifer's veins. She found more as she dug deeper. Ann Porter, Lila Wong, Lisa Goldman, all young, all beautiful, all dead or dying. The pattern stretched back years, a trail of destroyed lives leading directly to Charles Miller's door. When he entered the study, loosening his tie after a long day of meetings, he froze at the sight of her face. How long have you known? Jennifer's voice was eerily calm. How long have you known you were killing me? Charles' face drained of color. Jennifer, I can explain. Explain what? She stood, hurling the laptop at him. It crashed against the wall as he ducked. Explain how you've been murdering young women for years? How many, Charles? How many of us have you infected? It wasn't like that. He moved toward her, hands raised placatingly. I never meant to hurt anyone. I loved them. I love you. Jennifer laughed, a broken sound that echoed off the mahogany panels. Love? You call this love? She pulled up her sleeve, showing the bruises that mottled her skin. This is what your love does, Charles. This is what you've given me. I couldn't help myself. His voice cracked. You made me feel alive again. They all did. I knew I should stop, knew I should tell you, but I was weak. I couldn't bear to lose you. So you decided to kill me instead. She picked up a crystal paperweight from his desk, weighing it in her hand. Were you going to watch me die slowly, like the others? Add my picture to your collection. Charles sank into his chair, suddenly looking ancient. I never wanted this. When I was diagnosed years ago, I swore I'd never. But then Hannah came into my life. She was so young, so beautiful. Like you. I told myself it would be different with her, that I could control it. But I couldn't. And after she died? What about Michelle? Anne? Lila? Jennifer's voice rose with each name. What about me? I loved each of them, Charles whispered. I loved them too much to let them go. Loved them to death, Jennifer spat. She moved closer, looming over him. Did you watch them waste away? Did you buy them pretty things while they died? Was that part of the thrill? Charles reached for her hand, but she recoiled. Please, Jennifer. Let me help you. The treatments now are better. You can live a normal life. I'll pay for everything. Give you anything you want. Anything I want. She leaned down, her face inches from his. Can you give me back my life, Charles? Can you make me 19 again, with a future that doesn't include counting T-cells and taking toxic medications? Can you unkiss me, unlove me, unmurder me? Tears streamed down his face. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. Sorry isn't enough. Jennifer straightened, suddenly calm. You're a monster, Charles. A wealthy, sophisticated monster who preys on young women. And monsters deserve to be punished. She walked to the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. You should have killed me quickly, Charles. Because now I have nothing left to lose. The threat hung in the air between them as she left, her footsteps echoing through the silent house. In his study, Charles Miller put his head in his hands and wept, knowing that his past had finally caught up with him. Later that night, Jennifer sat in her room, methodically going through every gift he'd given her. The jewelry, the clothes, the car keys, all of it tainted now with the poison of his betrayal. She thought of the children, innocent Sophie and Isabel, who would never understand why their beloved babysitter disappeared. Her phone buzzed with a text from Charles. Please let me make this right. Jennifer stared at the message, her heart hardening with each beat. In that moment, she made her decision. Charles Miller had given her a death sentence. It was only fair that she return the favor. The tragedy was no longer approaching. It had arrived, wrapped in designer packages and sealed with poisoned kisses. And as Jennifer Brown began planning her revenge, she knew that only one of them would survive to see the spring. January brought bitter cold to Greenwich, matching the ice that had formed around Jennifer Brown's heart. Her transformation was as stark as the winter landscape. Gone was the bright-eyed teenager who'd fallen for Charles Miller's charm. In her place stood someone harder, colder, shaped by betrayal and disease. The mansion's East Wing guest suite had become her war room. The walls, once bare, were now covered with printouts, medical records she'd stolen from Charles' office, newspaper clippings about his previous victims, photographs documenting his pattern of destruction. Each piece of evidence fueled her rage, each discovery strengthening her resolve. Jennifer spent her nights researching his past victims obsessively. She created detailed timelines, tracking how long each woman had lasted after infection. Hannah Matthews, 3 years. Michelle Rodriguez, 2 years, 4 months. Lila Wong, barely 18 months. The pattern was clear: young women, all infected, all dead before their time. During the day, she maintained her role as the perfect nanny, caring for Sophie and Isabel with mechanical precision. But her smiles never reached her eyes anymore, and the children sensed the change. "You look sick," Sophie observed one afternoon. "Like Grandpa sometimes looks." The comment sent Jennifer rushing to the bathroom, where she vomited until her throat burned. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Her once glowing skin had taken on a waxy pallor, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. The virus was working its way through her system, leaving its mark. Charles watched her deterioration with mounting dread. He sent her texts that went unanswered, left notes she burned without reading. His gifts, more extravagant than ever, piled up unopened in her room. Each morning, he found them returned to his study, a silent rejection of his attempts at atonement. "We need to talk," he cornered her one evening after the children were asleep. "Please, Jennifer. Let me explain." "Explain?" Her laugh was brittle. "Like you explained to Hannah? To Michelle? Did they listen to your explanations while they died?" He reached for her arm, but she jerked away. "I never meant for this to happen. I got lost in loving you. All of you. I couldn't stop myself. Lost in loving us." Jennifer's voice dripped venom. "You're a predator, Charles. You targeted young, vulnerable women. Seduced us with your wealth, infected us with your poison, then watched us die. Was that your twisted version of love?" His face crumpled. "I can get you the best treatments. Money is no object. You don't have to suffer like they did." "No," she agreed, her eyes cold. "I won't suffer like they did. I have something they didn't: knowledge. And revenge." The threat hung between them, heavy as a guillotine blade. Charles began sleeping with his bedroom door locked, jumping at unexpected sounds. He hired additional security, installed new cameras throughout the mansion. But he couldn't escape the feeling that he was already trapped in Jennifer's web. Jennifer noticed his paranoia with grim satisfaction. She left subtle hints of her research where he would find them: a medical report here, a obituary there. Each discovery increased his anxiety, made him more reckless. She watched as he doubled his medication, started drinking heavily, made mistakes in business deals. Her own health continued to decline, but she barely noticed the physical symptoms anymore. Her mind was consumed with plans, with the meticulous orchestration of Charles Miller's downfall. She studied his routines, learned his vulnerabilities, prepared for the moment when she would strike. The children became unwitting pawns in her psychological warfare. She'd mention casually to Sophie how pale Grandpa looked, or ask Isabel if she'd noticed Grandpa's trembling hands. Their innocent observations at dinner would make Charles flinch, his fork clattering against fine china. One night, she left a single photograph on his pillow: Hannah Matthews in her hospital bed, weeks before her death. The next morning, Charles appeared at breakfast looking like he'd aged years overnight. His hands shook so badly he could barely hold his coffee cup. "What do you want?" he asked her later, his voice desperate. "Money? The house? Name your price." Jennifer smiled, her expression devoid of warmth. "I want what you took from them. From me." I want justice. Justice. Charles laughed bitterly. Or revenge. Is there a difference? She moved closer, letting him see what he'd done to her. The weight loss, the sallow skin, the death already beginning to show in her eyes. You're a killer, Charles. You've murdered young women for years. Did you think you'd never face consequences? He backed away from her, fear finally showing in his face. I'll go to the police. Confess everything. No, Jennifer said softly. You won't. Because then everyone would know, your family, your friends, your business associates. Your precious reputation would be destroyed. Your grandchildren would know their grandfather is a monster. The truth of her words hit him like physical blows. He knew she was right. He'd rather die than face public exposure. And Jennifer knew it too. The game continued through January, a deadly dance of predator and prey, though the roles had reversed. Charles Miller, once the hunter, had become the hunted. And Jennifer Brown, his chosen victim, had transformed into something far more dangerous than he could have imagined. The final confrontation was approaching, inevitable as the changing seasons. Both of them knew it, felt it building like a storm on the horizon. The only question was who would survive when it finally broke. In her room, Jennifer touched the newest lesion on her neck, a visible sign of the virus's progression. She smiled at her reflection, a ghost of her former self, knowing that soon it would all be over. One way or another, justice would be served. The tragedy was reaching its climax, and Greenwich's winter winds carried whispers of the violence to come. The night of February 15th settled over Greenwich like a funeral shroud. Jennifer stood before her mirror, methodically applying makeup to cover the lesions that had spread across her neck. Her hands were steady as she dressed in an elegant black dress, the first gift Charles had given her, back when she was still innocent. The mansion was quiet. Sophie and Isabel were away for the weekend, visiting their parents. The security guards Charles had hired were conveniently occupied with a false alarm at the property's gates, Jennifer's final chess move in their deadly game. Charles was in his study, as he always was at this hour. Jennifer watched through the security feeds she'd gained access to weeks ago as he poured his third glass of scotch. His hands trembled, spilling expensive liquor on his desk. She made her way to the study, her heels clicking against marble floors. A sound that once made Charles look up in anticipation, now made him flinch in fear. She didn't knock. I wondered when you'd come, Charles said without turning from his window. The glass in his hand caught the moonlight, amber liquid gleaming like poison. Did you wonder the same about them? Jennifer moved closer, her reflection joining his in the window. Did you watch them waste away, knowing they'd come for revenge? Charles turned finally, aging face lined with exhaustion and guilt. They never knew. I made sure they died believing it was just cruel fate. And that makes it better. Jennifer's laugh was sharp as broken glass. You let them die in ignorance while you moved on to your next victim. I loved them, Charles whispered. Each one. I told myself it would be different each time. That maybe this time, I could control it. Stop myself before. He gestured helplessly at Jennifer. Before you murdered another young woman. She perched on his desk, picking up a framed photo of his grandchildren. What a legacy you've built, Charles. Serial killer in a bespoke suit. I never meant to kill us. Jennifer cut him off. But you did. Hannah, Michelle, Lila, all dead because you couldn't keep your diseased hands to yourself. And now me. Charles sank into his chair, suddenly looking every day of his 70 years. I'll give you everything. The house, money, whatever you want. Just, please. Please what? Jennifer leaned forward. Please don't kill you. Please don't make you suffer like we did. Please don't destroy your perfect reputation. She stood, moving behind his chair. Her hands settled on his shoulders. A lover's caress turned menacing. Did they beg, Charles? When they found out? Did they ask why? Some did, he admitted, voice breaking. Others just faded away. I made sure they were comfortable. Taken care of. Such a gentleman. Jennifer's fingers tightened. Killing us softly, with luxury and lies. She reached into her purse, withdrawing a syringe. The needle caught the lamplight as she held it up. "Do you know what this is?" Charles stared at it, understanding dawning in his eyes. "My medication." Modified, Jennifer smiled. "A lethal dose, mixed with something to make it quick. Cleaner than you deserve." "Really? Jennifer, please dash." He tried to rise, but her hands held him firmly. "I'll confess everything. Go to prison. Anything you want." "I want my life back," she screamed, composure finally cracking. "I want to be 19 again, with a future. I want to never have met you, never have trusted you, never have loved you." The syringe plunged into his neck before he could respond. Charles gasped, hands clutching at the injection site. Jennifer stepped back, watching as understanding filled his eyes. "How long?" he managed to ask. "Minutes," she answered coldly. "Faster than you gave us. More merciful than we got." Charles' breathing became labored. He slumped in his chair, eyes fixed on Jennifer. "I did love you," he whispered. "All of you. That was the tragedy." "No," Jennifer corrected, watching as his eyes began to glaze. "The tragedy was believing you." She sat across from him, a parody of their first interview in this same room. Charles' breathing grew more ragged, his expensive shirt soaked with sweat. Jennifer observed clinically as death approached, noting each symptom with detached interest. "They'll know," Charles gasped. "Will they?" Jennifer smiled. A wealthy man with heart problems, taking multiple medications. Found dead in his study. Tragic, but not suspicious. Especially given your medical history. Charles's eyes widened at her implications, then began to drift closed. His breathing slowed, each exhale a struggle. Jennifer watched until the final moment, when Charles Miller's body gave a last shudder and went still. She stood carefully, smoothing her dress. With steady hands, she disposed of the syringe in the acid solution she'd prepared, wiped down every surface she'd touched. The security cameras would show nothing. She'd looped old footage weeks ago. In the morning, the housekeeper would find Charles Miller dead in his study, apparently from natural causes. His autopsy would reveal nothing suspicious. Jennifer had made sure of that. She'd learned from his mistakes, planned more carefully than he ever had. Walking out of the mansion for the last time, Jennifer paused in the foyer. The crystal chandelier caught moonlight, scattering diamonds across the marble floor. She remembered standing here months ago, young and impressed by such grandeur. Now it all looked like a mausoleum. She left her keys and phone on the entry table. By morning, Jennifer Brown would no longer exist. She had new documents, a new identity, and enough of Charles' money to ensure she'd live comfortably for whatever time she had left. The tragedy was complete. The monster was dead, but so was the innocent girl who'd first entered this house. In their place stood someone new, a woman forged in betrayal and disease, who'd learned that revenge, like love, could be a slow poison. Greenwich's winter wind whipped at her dress as she walked away, carrying the last traces of Jennifer Brown into the darkness. The discovery of Charles Miller's body made headlines across Connecticut. Prominent real estate developer found dead in Greenwich Mansion dominated the local news, while whispers of scandal already began circulating through the town's elite social circles. Detective Elena Rivera stood in Charles' study, examining the scene. Everything looked perfectly placed, too perfect. The half-empty Scotch glass, the family photos arranged just so, the midnight blue tie hanging precisely on the chair back. Preliminary tox screen shows elevated levels of his HIV medication, the medical examiner reported. Possible accidental overdose, or someone who knew his medical history, Rivera finished, her eyes scanning the room. Where's the babysitter? Jennifer Brown. That question launched a manhunt that would span months. Jennifer had vanished, leaving behind only a typed resignation letter citing health concerns. Her apartment was cleared out, her phone disconnected, her bank accounts emptied days before Charles' death. The investigation uncovered Charles' dark past piece by piece. Hannah Matthews' mother came forward first, sharing letters her daughter had written before her death. Then Michelle Rodriguez's sister arrived with photographs, text messages, a pattern emerging of young women hired, seduced, and ultimately destroyed. Greenwich social circles exploded with scandal. Charles Miller, their trusted friend and business associate, exposed as a predator who knowingly infected young women with HIV. The mansion, once a symbol of wealth and success, became a monument to tragedy. He seemed so charming, so generous, one society matron told reporters. But there was always something off about how he went through these young assistants. Detective Rivera pieced together Jennifer's movements through careful investigation. Security footage from various locations showed her methodical preparation, purchasing supplies, making arrangements, covering her tracks. But it was a single mistake that finally led to her capture. 6 months after Charles' death, a clinic in Montreal reported a patient matching Jennifer's description. She'd come in for HIV treatment, using forged documents. Canadian authorities arrested her as she left the clinic. The trial became a media sensation. Jennifer Brown, the teenage babysitter who executed revenge on her wealthy, HIV-positive employer who had intentionally infected her and others. The prosecution painted her as a calculating murderer. The defense portrayed her as a desperate victim seeking justice. Jennifer sat stoically through the proceedings, her once youthful face now gaunt and aged beyond her years. When she finally took the stand, her testimony silenced the courtroom. "He didn't just take my life," she stated, her voice steady. "He took Hannah's, Michelle's, Lila's, how many others? We were all so young, so trusting. He knew exactly what he was doing, choosing vulnerable girls, using his wealth and charm to seduce us, then infecting us with a death sentence." The jury struggled with the case. Yes, Jennifer had committed premeditated murder. But Charles Miller's actions had been equally calculating, equally deadly. After 3 days of deliberation, they returned with their verdict: guilty of second-degree murder, with a recommendation for leniency. The judge, acknowledging the extraordinary circumstances, sentenced Jennifer to 15 years, with possibility of parole after 8. "This case represents a tragedy on multiple levels," he stated. "While we cannot condone vigilante justice, we must acknowledge the systematic abuse that led to these events." Sophie and Isabel, Charles' granddaughters, never fully understood what happened. Their parents moved them away from Greenwich, away from the whispers and stares. The mansion was sold, its contents auctioned off, the proceeds split between Charles' victims' families. Jennifer Brown began her sentence at York Correctional Institution, where she established a support group for HIV-positive inmates. Her health, managed with proper medication, stabilized. She received letters from other young women who'd had encounters with Charles, some who'd escaped his attention, others who hadn't been so lucky. Detective Rivera visited her 1 year into her sentence. "How many others were there?" she asked through the visitor's glass. Jennifer smiled sadly. "We'll never know. Some are probably dead already. Others might not even know they're infected. That was his true crime, not just killing us, but doing it so slowly, so carefully, that justice could never really be served." The tragedy of Charles Miller and Jennifer Brown became a cautionary tale in Greenwich social circles. The mansion, despite extensive renovation, struggled to find buyers, its dark history lingering like a stain. Some claimed to see lights in the study late at night, or hear the click of heels on marble floors. But the real ghost story wasn't supernatural. It was the story of power abused, trust betrayed, and innocence destroyed. It was the story of how revenge, even when achieved, offers no real healing. Jennifer Brown would eventually be released from prison, her youth and beauty forever lost to Charles Miller's deadly games. But in the end, she found a different kind of purpose, working to prevent others from falling victim to predators in expensive suits with practiced smiles. The tragedy had come full circle, leaving behind lessons written in blood and tears. In Greenwich's exclusive circles, people still speak in hushed tones about the winter when justice and revenge became indistinguishable, when a teenage babysitter brought down one of their own, exposing the darkness that sometimes lurks behind wealth and privilege. The crystal chandelier from the mansion's foyer hangs now in a museum, a glittering reminder that appearances can deceive, that monsters sometimes wear bespoke suits, and that revenge, even when justified, carries its own terrible price.